But first, rocking Washington, D.C. this weekend are the guilty plea for lying to the FBI entered by former National Security Advisor to Donald Trump, Michael Flynn. That happened yesterday. The after effects also of the North Korean missile shot are reverberating, and the passing of the Senate of sweeping tax legislation, plus looming major changes at the Department of State and the Central Intelligence Agency. I'm joined to talk about these stories by NBC's own Steve Kornacki. He's our national political correspondent for NBC News. Hope Seck, who covers the Navy and the Marine Corps for military.com, and Politico's Jake Sherman. Steve, I want to start with you, if I could. I'd originally hoped to spend most of the morning asking you how much Ohio State has to beat Wisconsin by today to get into the playoffs. But now we got to talk about Mike Flynn. When I read that yesterday, when he pled guilty yesterday, I immediately thought, he's been cooperating. Who are they shooting at? What's your speculation, Steve Kornacki, about who the ultimate target of the Mueller investigation is right now?
Well, it's interesting because it looks like this guilty plea has to deal with lying to the FBI about contacts with the Russians, with the Russian ambassador after Election Day, basically in that transition period. And, you know, so much of the public conversation here has been about this idea of collusion, about what, if anything, was taking place during the campaign. But it looks, at least from the initial things that are being pieced together here, we're looking at what happened after the election. And that raises, it seems to me, a different potential question here, not so much one about this issue of collusion during the election, but about this idea of the Logan Act, about trying to set foreign policy, take actions on the foreign policy front before somebody's actually in office. You know, conversations with the Russians about sanctions involving Israel, and obviously the issue involving Israel and the sanctions involving what the Obama administration did at the end of last December. So I wonder, first of all, what realm are we in? Are we in a pre-election or post-election realm? The indications seem to be, at least tentatively, more on the post-election side. And then it's too of, you know, does Flynn actually have, if he is cooperating here, does he actually have what Mueller thinks he has, and will he cooperate to the extent Mueller maybe believes he'll cooperate? Because we've seen cases in the past where the plea deal is struck, the cooperation is agreed to, and then, you know, 6 months later, the prosecutor feels, hey, didn't get what I was looking for here.
Well, there are three possible targets, Steve. I can stay with you one more second, and that is Jared Kushner, Donald Trump Jr., and, of course, Steve Bannon. In the speculation you've heard, are any of those three either thought you to be the target or possibly to be cooperating with Mr. Mueller against one of the other ones?
Yeah, and I've heard it's all, you know, speculation, and I don't want to go into. I don't have any speculation I've heard to a substantive enough level that I feel good repeating it here, you know, other than to say it's one of those where I think my role here is to try to throw, and I know this is not the most glamorous thing to do in a moment like this, but to try to throw a little bit of caution into it here. It's a momentous development. It points to many possible directions, but in terms of what we know right now, it seems to be in a post-election realm. The names you mentioned are all being speculated about right now, and we will see what he gives to Mueller or what he doesn't.
Now, that's the biggest story in Washington, but the most significant story in the world is actually what North Korea did this week. Hope Seck, you cover the military, you cover the Navy, you cover the United States Marine Corps. North Korea popped off a missile that went up 3,000 miles, and then it flew 600 miles east. How prepared was the military for that launch?
Well, if you've been listening to the generals and the flag officers who've been testifying this year, you know that they expect and have been predicting that North Korea has both the ability and the intent to hit the U.S. with their missiles. So did they know that they have this new unseen-before missile that requires another axle to carry it on their launchers? The specifics are new, but this is exactly what they've been telegraphing and they've been predicting. It's very interesting to me because we've been talking about for years how North Korea is this unpredictable rogue state. And you don't know what they're going to do next. Well, in fact, they're becoming very predictable. And
so in terms of what went up, was there any conversation in the halls of the Pentagon or when you talked to the generals off the campus to shooting it down, to going after one of their launches? Did you hear that speculated at all?
You know, right now we're talking military action, whether it's a show of force, whether it's taking out the missile launchers, whether it is you know, just depleting their ability to launch these missiles. But North Korea has a hair trigger provocation, and we don't know what's going to set it off, and we don't know what they're going to respond to. Go ahead.
It's tense. I mean, it's really tense right now. And into that tension, Jake Sherman, comes instability from the White House about Rex Tillerson, CIA Director Mike Pompeo, and Tom Cotton. I want to roll a little tape from Meet the Press when I was a guest on October 8th earlier this year. The president's senior advisors are discussing with the president moving Director Pompeo from the CIA to state and Senator Tom Cotton to the CIA. For the strategic reason, and you mentioned this on the Today Show, the Secretary of State uniquely must represent the president abroad. And if every foreign leader is thinking, you think he's a moron, and not just a moron, a bleeping moron, it doesn't work. Secondly, there's a tactical reason. You send Pompeo and Cotton to confirmation hearings, they both have access to the data which will allow them to say there is no there in the Russian story. Jake Sherman, Rex Tillerson yesterday said it's an absurd story. What do you hear?
I hear what you've been saying now for 2 months, and I'll give you credit because whenever I'm on your radio show, you do say this, that this is a real thing and this is going to happen. Tillerson, as you know, has lost and seems to lost the trust of the president. And I think Pompeo and Tom Cotton are of the same ilk and have been working very closely with the president. I know both Pompeo and Cotton from serving in Congress, and they are both of the same ideological bent. They are very close to each other. They both have the same worldview. I want to insert one note of caution here. I wonder if Cotton would take this job, and I'm sure you think he will, Hugh, but I think that, Cotton certainly seems to have ambition to be in the White House himself one day. At least that's the way many observers in the Capitol view. And the question is being CIA director better for that eventual goal than being a member of Congress, being in the Senate? I don't know the answer to that, and that's something Cotton will have to wrestle with himself. He would certainly get confirmed. Pompeo would certainly get confirmed, but there's a question about his ambition and what this gives him.
Yeah, H.W. Bush, it worked for him. Hope Seck, what do the generals say? We've got General McMaster at NSC. We've got General Mattis as SecDef. We have General Dunford, obviously, as the chairman. You've got General Kelly as the chief of staff. If you send a West Point officer, Mike Pompeo, and an Army Ranger, Tom Cotton, to run state and CIA, it's just like the greatest national security team since Schultz and Reagan. But did the generals welcome this, in your view? So General John Kelly, of course, he's got this 40-year military career. He knows one thing very well. You want to eliminate distractions, and you want to present a united front. President Donald Trump is not a team of rivals president. He doesn't want the Lincoln cabinet. And I think General Kelly knows that. He wants this united front that President Trump feels comfortable with, doesn't feel like he has to feud in a public setting. So having these folks, the military background, which we know President Trump's loves, is just an addition to that. Steve Kornacki, December is usually a period of Christmas parties at the White House and not much news. Do you see this transition happening at state and CIA before the end of the year or early in next year, and does it help bring stability to a White House rock scandal?
Yeah, it's interesting. I've heard some talk, by the way, that maybe Tillerson, maybe it matters to Tillerson finishing up the first year, and so if this is a matter of Tillerson sort of finally taking the hint, getting the message, and deciding on his own to leave without actually being fired, maybe that takes it into next year a little bit. I do think you mentioned December and all the sort of things going on right now. An interesting, complicating factor, maybe potentially here, is what happens in that Alabama Senate race on December 12th. If the Democrat is able, if Doug Jones, the Democrat, is able to win that Senate race, look, then that's a seat Democrats are going to pick up right away, at least for the next 2 years, that they didn't think they were going to, have, and Republicans didn't think they were going to have to worry about. And then it does raise a question if Tom Cotton is part of the scenario. And I agree with Jake. I'm not sure Cotton really wants to move to the CIA long-term for his political aspirations. But if he does, that does raise a question. Hey, look, Arkansas, it's a state that used to be Democratic. It's gotten very Republican. It's not as Republican as Alabama. And in an sort of incumbent anti-White House midterm like 2018 very well may be, do you want to be injecting that kind of instability into a special Senate election in Arkansas, too?
Jake Sherman, my reporting is that Cotton would indeed take the directorship of the Central Intelligence Agency were it offered to him by the president, and those discussions between the president and his senior advisors are ongoing. But I don't believe Arkansas presents the same kind of situation as Alabama, because there is only one Roy Moore. What do you think?
That's probably right. I mean, listen, special elections are weird things, and weird things happen. There is some reporting out there that there are Democrats who are looking at it. It does seem like a safe seat, especially if the governor chooses somebody with a conservative record in Congress who's already been elected, someone like Steve Womack, another Army veteran, or a French Hill, who's a Republican from Little Rock. These are two members of the House who have electoral history, have been vetted, and could win a statewide race. So there are ways to prevent Arkansas from going Democratic. There are steps you could